time to get back to all of the crazy stuff that is happening in the book right now. Worlds in collision. All right, so we're talking about the Venus and Earth interaction. So at this point, Venus is in full-on comet mode, and Earth is starting to trail behind it. So Venus crosses Earth's orbit in front of it, and as Venus is in comet mode, it's got one hell of a tail coming off of it, right? You know, huge black smoke tail just flowing off of it, burning fire within the tail, right? That's the column or the pillar of fire that everybody saw in the sky back in the day. And, you know, at night it was all on fire and stuff, and then during the day it just looked like, you know, one hell of a huge pillar of black smoke. So we're seeing all of this going on right now. Now, we've gone over all kinds of other catastrophes being caused by this interaction. This time, he's going to cover what happened to the sky. Now, we've already covered meteors and stuff like that. So if you were gravitating towards, you know, people just thought that, you know, when rocks and crap are falling out of the sky, they were like, oh, the sky is falling. That's not what they're talking about. And then we'll go over one other section in this book. Both of these sections are rather small, so I'll just combine them. All right, I'm going to shut up. Let's get to reading, and then let's see what kind of analyzations we can apply to the readings. This portion of the book is titled, The Collapse of the Sky. The rain of meteorites and fire from the sky, the clouds of dust, an exogenous origin that drifted low, and the displacement of the world quarters created the impression that the sky had collapsed. The ancient peoples of Mexico referred to a world age that came to its end when the sky collapsed and darkness enshrouded the world. Strabo relates, in the name of Ptolemaeus, the son of Lagus, a general of Alexander and founder of the Egyptian dynasty called by his name, that the Celtae who lived on the shores of the Adriatic were asked by Alexander what it was they feared most, to which they replied that they feared no one, but only that the sky might collapse. The Chinese refer to the collapse of the sky, which took place when the mountains fell. Because mountains fell or were leveled at the same time when the sky was displaced, ancient peoples, not only the Chinese, thought that the mountains support the sky. I'm curious about how true that is. I mean, I'm sure some cultures probably maybe thought that, but I wonder if that's really the message to take out of that. I don't know. The earth trembled and the heavens dropped. The mountains melted, says the Song of Deborah. The earth shook. The heavens also dropped at the presence of God. Even Sinai itself was moved, says the psalmist. The tribes of Samoa in their legends refer to a catastrophe when, in the days of old, the heavens fell down. The heavens or the clouds were so low that the people could not stand erect without touching them. Now this is where it gets interesting. That statement is actually where I actually think that's probably one of the most important things he says in this chapter. Because a lot of these people describe the sky coming low. They're not just talking about meteors falling down, you know, like chunks of things. You know, you would think, not like that. They're not talking about it like that, in my opinion. Let me read a little more, and then I'll come back to this. All right, let's keep going. The Finns tell in their Kalevala that the support of the sky gave way, and then a spark of fire kindled a new sun and a new moon. The Kalevala is also extremely interesting because this is one of those myths that talk about where the moon actually comes from. So remember, we talked about the moon not existing at a certain point in time in history in a different show. This is one of those legends that actually shows that as well over there. Anyway, I digress. We'll keep going. Oh, and it also talks about getting a new sun. Because don't forget, back in the history, once again, there were two suns that ancient people talk about, right? The good sun and the bad sun. We're going on. We're moving on. The Lapps are a different Eastern European peoples. The Lapps make offerings accompanied by the prayer that the sky should not lose its support and fall down. The Eskimos of Greenland are afraid that the support of the sky may fail, and the sky fall down and kill all human beings. A darkening of the sun and the moon will precede such a catastrophe. Like, this is amazing. Like, all of these people literally have the exact same fear that shows up at the exact same time. That's a problem that the mainstream actually has to contend with. Why is it that certain points in everybody's mythology, no matter how crazy it may sound, why do they all show up around the same time? They always ignore this. They do not discuss any kind of comparative mythology, and it's mind-blowing that they don't. Oh man. And then how would these people why would they even say anything about the sun and the moon darkening when this kind of stuff happens? I mean, why even put that in there? If all of this was fake, there's no reason to just throw that in there. Oh yeah, the sky's falling, and I guess the moon and the sun will become dark for some weird reason. Yeah, just throw that in there. Yeah, that is not happening. These people are recording what they saw. Moving on. The primitives of Africa in eastern as well as western provinces of the continent tell about the collapse of the sky in the past. The Ovaherero tribesmen say that many years ago, the greats of the sky, Iriu, let the sky fall on the earth. Almost all the people were killed, only a few remained alive. The tribes of the Kanga and the Luanga also have a tradition of the collapse of the sky, which annihilated the human race. The Wanyoro and the Unyoro likewise relate that the sky fell on the earth and killed everybody. The god Kagra threw the firmament upon the earth to destroy mankind. The tradition of the Kaxinawa, the Aborigines of western Brazil, is narrated as follows. The lightnings flashed and the thunders roared terribly, and all were afraid. Then the heaven burst, and the fragments fell down and killed everything and everybody. Heaven and earth changed places. Nothing that had life was left upon the earth. In this tradition are included the same elements: the lightnings and thunderings, the bursting of heaven, the fall of meteorites. About the change of places between heaven and earth, there is more to say, and I shall not postpone the subject for long. Now this ends that section of this little spot, so we'll keep going, but the takeaway from all of that is that all around planet Earth, all these ancient cultures all describe the same thing. They start talking about everything falling from the sky. Now, we could just say these people thought the sky was falling because of all the physical stuff that was coming down. Make no mistake, right? These guys were being rained on with meteorites, hot stones, oil, bitumen, etc. And then of course you have volcanoes throwing stuff into the atmosphere. You have the tail of Venus in some instances interacting with Earth. But one of the things that would also be happening is that Earth's atmosphere would begin to get stretched and attracted towards Venus. And likewise with Venus. So what these people would have seen, especially if there were no smoke, but there's smoke, so maybe they didn't quite see it like this. But in theory, they could have seen the atmospheres of both planets being stretched toward one another. So if they had a clear shot towards Venus, they would have seen the elongated stretching of Venus's atmosphere. But that means that ours was probably stretching too. So let's say the atmospheres are stretching. The side that's stretching towards the planet, the sky would look like it's getting taller or higher. And if you're on the other side of the planet, you would be, losing atmosphere. Would that look like the sky was literally lower? I wonder about that. I mean, so when people are saying, because there's a lot of ancient histories that literally say the sky was low, the sky came low, it's actually a problem, and even Velikovsky will address it later on in this book. But did the sky literally come lower in certain areas of the planet? It's just a question that I have, because that would be one of the effects I would think that if the atmospheres get pulled towards one another, and pretty sure we believe that actually did happen because of some other cataclysms that happened during the Saturn situation where people may have actually seen that. And that's actually maybe where the concept of the shape of the egg came from. Because the planet's atmosphere being pulled in one direction would ultimately make it look like it's an egg shape. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. The next section of the book is called
Boiling Earth and Sea.
Two celestial bodies were driven near to each other. The interior of the terrestrial globe pushed towards the exterior. The Earth, disturbed in its rotation, developed heat. The land surface became hot. Various sources of many peoples describe the melting of the Earth's surface and the boiling of the sea. The Earth burst and lava flowed. The Mexican sacred book Popol Vuh, the manuscript Chacaquel, and the manuscript Troano all record how the mountains in every part of the Western Hemisphere simultaneously gushed lava. The volcanoes that opened along the entire chain of the Cordilleras and in other mountain ranges and on flat land vomited fire, vapor, and torrents of lava. These and other Mexican sources relate how, at the closing hours of the age that was brought to an end by the rain of fire, mountains swelled under the pressure of molten masses and new ridges arose. New volcanoes sprang out of the earth and streams of lava flowed out of the cleft earth. Now this stuff is interesting because what we have here is we can actually start to begin to explain all of the geological anomalies that we have over here in the Western Hemisphere. So, for example, the Andes are a problem for geologists. Why is that? Because the Andes have all the earmarkings of being extremely new mountains. They do not look to be billions of years old, and they certainly don't look to be millions of years old either. Now, they try to come off and say, oh yeah, they try to pull it. They cope pretty hard. It's pretty bad when you start really getting into the sciences and the way they have to stretch everything to make it millions and billions of years old, right? It's hilarious. Anyway, the Andes are a huge problem for geologists because, for example, geologists, everybody uses plate tectonics in the mainstream. But the Andes does not work with plate tectonics. They can't even stretch it. They try to cope with it, but it doesn't even work within their mainstream theory. So you have to ask yourself, why do these geologists hold on to it so much? Also, the Andes, once again, they show all of this evidence that the way they grew and the way they were forced up and the strata that was forced up is all newer strata. Even more interesting, you have things like Lake Titicaca that show that it was literally on a completely different angle only a few thousand years ago. Even worse, you also get all of these ocean crustaceans and everything up there 10 to 15,000 feet up into the air in the Andes. And those crustaceans, they literally still have flesh on them in certain cases. They are not old. They are not millions of years old. So the question is, how did all of that sea life, for example, get 12,000 feet up in the air? Why is it Lake Titicaca shows a recent different angle of the water of where it used to be? This is all evidence that points to a completely different outcome, right? Scientific evidence that points in a completely different direction, and all of this is 100% ignored by the mainstream. It becomes ridiculous because these mainstream people keep saying, oh, I love science, you guys. Oh, science says this, science does that. And then they completely ignore any science that goes against their little pet theory. Does this enrage me? Yes. Does it make me want to start choking people? Yes. But I won't. We'll continue. Let's go on. Events underlying Greek and Mexican traditions are narrated in the scriptures. The mountains shake with a swelling. The earth melted. Clouds and darkness, fire, the earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. The earth trembled, the mountains melted. even that Sinai. He rebuketh the sea, and maketh it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is burned, yea, the world, and all that dwell therein. The rivers streamed, and even the bottom of the sea boiled here and there. The sea boiled, all the shores of the ocean boiled, all the middle of it boiled. Says the Zendavesta, the star Tristra made the sea boil. Could you imagine that? Like all this crap going on. You have like lava spewing out everywhere. You have hot stones falling down from the sky, hurricanes, earth shaking. But you know, okay, fine. You like you're like lit on fire by some oil. You know, you're just running around. You're like running around on fire. Get the oil off me. Get the oil. You jump in the get in the water, bro. Get in the water. Then you jump in the water. Then the water starts boiling. It's like, God damn, dude, can I just like not be on fire for 2 seconds? Like that's what your life would be like. That there's like nowhere to run. Your survival was completely just like rolling the dice. Be like, yeah, you could literally, you know what? If this happens in the future, if we ever run into another planet, all you have to do, just stand wherever you are. Don't even move, because there is like no way for you to stop dying. You just have to sit there and be like, well, all right, I'll just sit here and wait till this ends. Maybe I will live. Like, that's all you can do. Like, there's no underground bunkers to go into because you could be melted. You know, there's no cave you can go hide in because you could be crushed or melted. You know, there's no, what do you even do, man? Like, you're just screwed no matter what happens. All right, let's go on. Oh, and here's something that's kind of important. He hasn't mentioned it, but one of the things that is going on during this event, it's not just Venus and Earth that are having problems or that are in the sky. So there's all kinds of stuff happening in the sky at this point in time. One of the things that actually exists further out, now it's in the background, but it's still there. Our ancestors could see it. Jupiter was way closer to us than it is now. I don't know exactly how much closer, but it was close enough to where Jupiter takes part in some of the actions during some of these conflicts. Now, that's a whole other piece to the puzzle, and right now we're focusing on the Velikovsky stuff and how he's telling the story. But he mentions this, the Tistria from the Zendavesta. So Tistria is Jupiter. So he's basically, the Zendavesta says that Jupiter was responsible for the seas boiling on planet Earth. Now, like I said, this is kind of something for a different topic, but Jupiter is also hanging around in the background, and there's a lot more going on cosmologically than just Venus crossing by Earth. The only reason I have not mentioned that is just because we're going through what Velikovsky has written. He writes about Jupiter doing stuff, don't get me wrong, but we're just kind of covering how he covers this particular event. So we'll build up a foundation and we'll go from there. So for those of you who are experts and are just listening to this as, you know, kind of a refresher, I know it's there. Velikovsky knows it's there as well. But for those of you who are new, don't worry about it yet. We're not there. All right, let's move on. The traditions of the Indians retain the memory of this boiling of the water in river and sea. The tribes of British Columbia tell, great clouds appeared, such a great heat came, that finally the water boiled. People jumped into the streams and lakes to cool themselves, and died. On the North Pacific coast of America, the tribes insist that the ocean boiled. It grew very hot. Many animals jumped into the water to save themselves, but the water began to boil. The Indians of the Southern Ute tribe in Colorado record in their legends that the rivers boiled. So why is everything heating up? Why is everything boiling? Well, we have a few processes going on simultaneously in the Earth right now. So one of the things we have is the simple thing. The Earth is literally being twisted. There, you know, this is where you see all of the fault lines that people call plates in the mainstream. Those fault lines were created during this stressful moment, or at least most of them, not all of them. Most of them were created during this moment with the Venus situation. Now, Jupiter, once again, actually plays a part in this, but we'll get into that later. Another process that is also probably taking place during all of this due to so much electromagnetic friction going on, you're basically probably creating different kinds of induction ovens. So you're probably finding points and areas on the planet, not only Earth, but it's probably happening on Venus as well. And those particular points where you can have an induction area, think of like an induction coil, those areas are just going to heat up. You don't necessarily need to, and you don't see, induction heating anything, right? It's basically invisible. And on a planetary scale, you would never see it. It would just suddenly, stuff would heat up in a particular area, and if you're there, you're dead, right? Or if you're far away, you can watch the rocks melt right in front of you for a second. And I don't know how long it's sustained. They say that it melts. It's not sustained forever, obviously, but I don't know if it stays there for days, if it stays there for a few minutes. But this would explain why you find particular areas of the ocean boiling and not others boiling. Anyway, Jewish tradition, as preserved in the rabbinical sources, declares that the mire at the bottom of the Sea of Passage was heated. See, every time I read this, I learn something new. Jeez. The Lord fought against the Egyptians with a pillar of cloud and fire. The mire was heated to the boiling point by the pillar of fire. The rabbinical sources also say that the pillar of fire and smoke leveled mountains. See, alright, so we also have heating going on in the area that they're walking across. So there's a lot of variables going on, and I don't have a good chain of evidence right now. I haven't seen it that really explains how all of this went down. Like, so if the ground is being heated while they're running across the bottom of the ocean or the sea, I mean, is that what allowed them to get through it because the ground got heated and then they were able to run across because it kind of cooled down? Or was, I don't know. Anyway, Hesiod, in his Theogony, relating the upheaval caused by a celestial collision, says, "The huge earth groaned. A great part of the huge earth was scorched by the terrible vapor and melted as tin melts when heated by man's art, or as iron, which is hardest of all things, is softened by glowing fire in mountain glens." According to the traditions of the New World, the profile of the land changed in a catastrophe. New valleys were formed, mountain ridges were torn apart, new gulfs were cut out, ancient heights were overturned, and new ones sprang up. The few survivors of the ruined world were enveloped in darkness. The sun in some way did not exist. And in intervals in the light of blazing fires, they saw the silhouettes of new mountains. God, could you imagine that? Like going through all of this stuff and then somehow surviving it, and then you start to look around at your surroundings and then you're like, holy crap, there's a mountain there? Where did that come from? Or maybe you're now sitting, 10,000 feet higher in the air than you were originally only an hour ago. That would just be crazy, just sitting there and you just lift it up. I would love to know how that felt like, because there's actually a lot of evidence that literally happened down in the Andes, right? Where villages were just lifted piecemeal up way into the air, like with 10, 12,000 feet into the sky, on the mountains, not flying in the sky. And that's, where they had to chill. I mean, you're just going to sit there and be like, well, I guess this is where we live now. There's nothing else you can do, right? If you start at sea level and then you're right. Anyway, okay, moving on. The Mayan sacred book Popol Vuh says that the god rolled the mountains and removed mountains, and great and small mountains moved and shaked. Mountains swelled with lava. Conneria Veracocha, the god of the Incas, raised mountains from the flat land and flattened other mountains. And similarly, when Israel went out of Egypt, the sea saw and fled, the mountains skipped like rams, and the little hills like lambs. Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord, which removeth the mountains, which overturneth them in his anger, which shaketh the earth out of her place, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea. Now that ends this section. So, I mean, mind-blowing stuff, man. I mean, could you imagine living through these kinds of catastrophes all going on simultaneously? One of these is bad enough, right? If you have continents dropping into the ocean or rising, that's pretty bad, right? I mean, that's someone's having a bad day. Or if, you know, just some mountain ridges are rising 10 to 15,000 feet into the sky overnight. That's probably going to suck for somebody. Right, but you have all of this going on simultaneously. It is no wonder that we have lost so much of our history. To lose the amount of history that we have lost, if you think about it, we literally would have had to have gone some sort of catastrophe that did this exact thing. You would have to wipe out not just some populations, you would have to like just grind the earth down. I mean, you would just have to absolutely slaughter hundreds of millions, billions on the earth to lose the amount of knowledge that we have lost. I mean, you would literally have to drop continents into the ocean. You would have to get rid of them. You couldn't even, you can't leave anything to be found, and that's what has happened. Right? So is it possible that we have lost entire civilizations under 10,000 feet of water in the ocean? Absolutely. There is no reason to believe that that is not the case. So when people say, well, where is the evidence of this civilization? It's like, dude, it's down there. There's nothing we can do about it. You know how much garbage is on top of that? Not only is it under 10 to 12,000 feet of water, but who knows how much mud and muck, etc. you also have to dig to even begin to maybe find anything that survived. All right, I went on a semi-Atlantis tangent there. By the way, I'm not like saying Atlantis is 100%. I'm on the fence on Atlantis, by the way. But it's stuff like this that actually makes me think that something like that could be possible. Because if a whole continent goes down, you would think that everybody would remember it. And to be fair, everybody does remember it to some degree or another. But to wipe out that amount of information on a worldwide scale, you would need a worldwide catastrophe. And here we have like a dozen catastrophes all happening simultaneously. This is probably more than enough to absolutely destroy all of our histories. Yeah, I think that's all it would take. You could do it scientifically. Just something to think about. Alright, that's it for this one.